will go to the German Navy in a peaceful way, which is a good thing. The second speaker of today, of this afternoon, is Stephan Huck. Stephan studied social science in Hamburg during his army officer training, and since 2002, Stephan Huck is the managing director of the German Naval Museum, and he is also a lecturer in the museum science at the University of Oldenburg. Please welcome Stephan Huck.
Can I just remind anyone who's going with Joni that she's gathering people out in the lobby here right now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the kind introduction. And thank you for giving me the opportunity for being here. First of all, I like to thank all the organization for this marvelous organization of this week, and thanks to Kim for handling all this. This was really a great experience, and it's a pleasure to speak to this distinguished auditorium. And of course, I also like to say hello to all of those who just participate virtually, if there are still any, I don't know. And as the German Navy Museum is new in the ICMM, I'd like to introduce at first the museum. The key visual of this slide shows you the museum site, and the picture has been taken from the front funnel of our biggest museum vessel, the destroyer Mulders. And the photo illustrates quite well the visitor's perspective on the museum, because the museum is frequently regarded as a fleet of museum vessels with a museum as an appendix, not as a museum that also has vessels on display. And in the next few minutes, I'd like to focus a bit more detailed on the role of vessels and the challenges and chances of its display. Our museum was opened to the public 25 years ago, so we are quite young. Our founding fathers made two important decisions that determine our work until today. The first one was to claim to be the German Naval Museum. It was a courageous claim, as the museum wasn't neither supported by the government nor the city of Wilhelmshaven, nor owned it a large collection. And in the very beginning, the operational costs were completely generated by visitors' entrances, and still we mainly operate independently and have to earn 75% of our operational costs by visitors' fees. The second courageous decision was to display accessible historical vessels. Many museum professionals warned us in the beginning that the small museum couldn't be able to handle the challenges and cost of them. When the museum opened, it had two vessels on display, a submarine from the Cold War era, a 205 class, and a mine-hunting vessel of the first class of naval vessels that was built on German shipyards after the Second World War. This vessel represents one of the major tasks after the war, clearing the seas of the dangerous legacies of it. But sister ships of her were also involved in the first naval missions abroad after the German reunification in the so-called Operation South Flank, a mine-hunting operation at the coast of Kuwait in the 1990s. In 2005, the destroyer Mulders was added to the fleet. 2 years ago, in 2003, the ship had been decommissioned after 34 years of service in the Cold War without firing a shot in anger, but though a witness of major milestones of German naval history. Built in the USA, it is a proof of the close relationship between the German Navy, the NATO in general, and the USA in particular. After years of service at the northern flank of the NATO and in the standing naval forces, she served after the German reunification in the first missions abroad, for example, Operation Sharp Guard at the coast of ex-Yugoslavia, and Operation Enduring Freedom after the attacks of 9/11. From a technical point of view, the ship marks the end of steamships in German navies and, at least preliminary, the last destroyer class in German navies. The ship is named after a high decorated World War II officer, a later on controversially discussed decision that offers us the opportunity to discuss matters of German military tradition on board of the ship. In 2016, the fast patrol boat Gepard, which means cheetah, was added to the fleet. Its decommissioning a year ago in 2015 marked the end of a 100 years lasting era of fast patrol vessels in German navies, vessels that were mainly engaged in the marginal seas like the Baltic or the Mediterranean. The ship is the only unit we have on display where also women served on board, as the German Navy was open for female soldiers in all branches since 2001, so it gives us the chance to focus on a development that changes a male-dominated culture fundamentally. 3 more vessels, a fast patrol boat of the Eastern German Navy, the so-called People's Navy on the left on the picture, a harbor tug, and a midget submarine from the Second World War were also on display, but not accessible. Very special case is the sail training vessel, which we added in 2008 to our collection. The vessel is a so-called, or modified so-called Kriegsfischkutter, which means war fishing cutter, which was used by the German Naval Academy for officers training between 1956 and 2006. And we added it in 2008 to our collection and decided to keep the vessel afloat. Since 2009, it is approximately 70 days per year sailing in the North Sea and in the Baltic Sea. And all crew members are volunteers, and also the maintenance lies in the hands of the volunteers. This chart is based on a visitor's inquiry from 2017 and underlines my introductory remarks. The museum's vessels play an important role in the decision of the visitors to visit the German Naval Museum. Therefore, the museum vessels are an integral part of our exhibition. We regard them as technical artifacts with their own specific history, but also as platforms with relationship to broader phenomena of German military history. And the key visual of this slide underlines the fascination that those artifacts apply towards the visitors. A fascination that can be used to make them aware for the topics of the museum, but it's of course also a fascination that causes its own risk, because we talk of warships and war in general, and frequently this fascination obscures that we talk about warships. So it's one of the major tasks of the museum to talk about military violence and the consequences of war. The sail training vessel Northwinds play a special role in the museum. It gives us the chance to train skills of seamanship, to align volunteers in a participative way to the museum, and it also serves as an ambassador for the museum. So to come to an interim conclusion in the middle of my talk, the major question of this day was, can and should maritime museums continue to operate vessels? The answer from my point of view is they should. In our particular way, they are without doubt the guarantee for the museum's attraction and offer the chance to get people interested in naval history that are not necessarily Navy enthusiasts. But still, can museums still operate vessels? The answer is far more difficult and will be no final answer. And I think I will tell you a story that many of you already experience. It's my impression after this week, especially because our fleet is still young and the problems increases with each year of display. So, which steps bring a vessel to our collection? At first, the decision to integrate an original vessel into the museum fleet must be taken in accordance to our collection status, so it has to have a certain relevance for German naval history, and we also must have the resources to maintain it. If we expect not to have the resources, we won't take the ship to our collection. So regrettably, we decided not to overtake frigates of the class 102, which were decommissioned this year because we don't have the resources to display them. All of our ships were immediate after being decommissioned transferred to the collection. Therefore, we just had to prepare them for display and to conserve the status quo, but not necessarily to restore earlier historical conditions, which keep the effort to transition confined. Their career as museum vessels starts with dry docking, closing all openings under the waterline, and painting the hull. All weapons are demilitarized and all liquids are removed. When shifted to the museum, the vessels are from a legal point of view no longer regarded as vessels, but as buildings, and the tours aboard and the accessibility has to be certified by the building authorities. The continuous work to preserve the vessels is done by 3 museums technicians, which is quite not enough, as you can assume, and a number of approximately 100 volunteers, most of them former crew members. Only few of them live in Wilhelmshaven, most of them live spread all over the Republic, and they come annually twice for short periods of work on the vessels, in general one in spring and one in autumn to prepare the vessels for the summer season or the winter. The work scope is defined in collaboration between the museum and the volunteers, and all in all, they spent in the last years an equivalent of 4,000 hours work per year in the museum. Oh, sorry. Not only our ships are getting older, the crews are as well. Therefore, the museum works now on a new volunteer concept which aims on attracting new personnel with crafting skills that are not intentionally related or former crew members. And to bring these two parts of volunteers together is one of the challenges we face or we have to handle. Of course, some damages need professional work, especially the wooden mine hunting vessel needed a lot of attention in the last years. It has been twice dry docked since the beginning of her career as a museum vessel, and during the last docking, planks that were damaged by the shipworm had to be replaced, and the copper plating in the waterline was applied to avoid further shipworm damages. Also, 3 years ago, the complete deck had to be renewed. Due to legal restrictions, the former teak deck has been replaced by a deck of larch wood. This indicates the necessity to make frequent compromises between historical authenticity and possible or financeable solutions in restoration projects. And of course, all steps of the restorations are documented by the museum. Our sail training ship Nordwind is as well a special case in restoration, as it has not only to aim on the accessibility of the ship, but also on its seaworthiness. It has to be certified every 5 years, and luckily we received 2 years ago a funding of €2 million by the German Ministry of Defense for a fundamental restoration. This is at the moment executed by a Danish shipyard under the supervision by an experienced shipbuilding engineer. Part of the project is replacing of rotten planks and parts of the frames. For safety reasons, the government also demanded a new collision bulkhead in the bow of the ship. The works will be finished in April 23 and give us the opportunity to operate the vessels at least for the next 15 years. So, to come to an end, historical vessels play a crucial role in the German Naval Museum and are not only attractors that guarantee the economic success of the museum, they are also an integral part of the exhibition concept. But their maintenance is on the one hand a big challenge for the museum that can only be handled by large volunteer engagement and a careful and restrictive collection strategy. So at the moment it's not intended to enlarge the fleet of the museum vessels in the next years. What we now work on is a complete renewal of the museum, including a new exhibition concept. Yes, thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.